Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Anxiety Recovery Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest with me. We're going to be talking all about really healing perfectionism, where it stems from, where it's coming from, and really, I hate to use the term get rid of it, but to really heal and integrate this part so that you stop feeling paralyzed by fear, and so that you can actually move forward with your life, your personal life, your relationships, your work life, all of those things. So today I have Dr. Ray Doktor. So he works as a breakthrough life and relationship coach. Since 1995, he's successfully helped over 6,000 clients break through limiting beliefs and challenges to have better relationships and improve family life and even more success. He was on a previous podcast episode all about trusting yourself and your intuition. So if you haven't listened to that one, please go ahead and do so. So can you share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
I got to make sure I get this right, otherwise it will not be perfect and I won't be well received or liked or, to be seen as an authority on this topic. Wait a minute, let me get to it. So, um, I obviously got to this place by having a perfect childhood, which leads to that because through that imperfection, it led to this work. And what I mean by that is that just like everyone else, there's a time, where and for sure for people listening to this, I imagine they are open-minded to change. There comes a point where I think many of us arrive to where we realize, wait a minute, that's the same type of guy I keep attracting to every job I seek. I end up thinking the boss is an asshole to, I moved 5 times and everywhere I go, I think everyone's assholes. Maybe it's me, you know. And so we realized, wait a minute, we're bringing our problems wherever we go. And that's how I led to this led me to my work, just working on myself. And I won't share too much about that, but it was after my second DUI, and it was in
Mhm.
it was in 1993. And the drug and alcohol counselor Jim said to me, he said, I don't know if you have a drinking problem, but you do cause a lot of problems when you drink. You
Mm.
know? And then I explored that a little bit, and I definitely was an angry man, and I had a lot of stuff going on that I was pushing down, and that led to me seeing a therapist, a traditional therapist, and it led to me really diving into spirituality. A girlfriend at the time, her name was Marcy, gave me the book "You Can Heal Your Life," and so
Mm.
early on with my career or my path to transformation, I kind of had a Western and Eastern approach to kind of be able to pull from both and or to arrive to who I am today, which is imperfect.
Mm. Yes, I love that. It's just like people look to mentors or therapists or coaches,
Mhm.
insert title here, and they're thinking, oh, they're going to help me because they're perfect. But a lot of the time, it's like they're working with us, not because we're quote unquote perfect, but because our life has brought us different challenges. And so that we can relate to other people because we've learned how to transmute these experiences ourselves so that we can teach other people. And so, can you share a little bit, maybe a personal story about how you have battled with perfectionism, or maybe at a point where you realize this is so intense, this is really stopping me from my goals and where I want to go to? Could you share a little bit about that?
Well, I can actually speak about it more, what has happened in the last couple of years. As an
Mm-hmm.
example, I have this book here, all right?
Mm-hmm.
All it takes is one, and it became a bestseller. And what's funny about this book is that people ask, how long did it take you to write that? Technically, like physically, on like say when I was typing, not a lot of time. Once
Mm-hmm.
I committed to just getting it done. Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
I had written already 3 books, which I didn't think were good enough. Um, I've thought, I can study this other, I can learn more about Chinese medicine and get a doctorate in something else. I had this idea I had to know more or know about everything. And so there was that. It was where, as I evolved, as I started learning more, about my own modalities that I was using to learning more about myself and just relationships, just like yourself, Valerie, that the things I said a year ago, 5 years ago, were irrelevant. I became a new consciousness. I became a new person to where those things I said I didn't maybe believe completely, or in this new now moment, I could say it in a way that made more sense. And the reason why I'm bringing it to this moment and talking about the book was this, is that I could have had a book out 15 years ago. Everybody has
Mm.
been waiting for me to get a book out. It took me 15 years emotionally, spiritually to finish this.
Hmm.
So there you
Hmm.
go. And what's funny about it is that even though it's written, like when it was done and edited and everything else, I kind of forgot even what I wrote. And so
Mm.
people started doing podcasts with me, and they started pulling out different chapters and asking me questions. And after the third podcast, I realized that, holy shit, I need to read my book again. And the reason why this is irrelevant is because who I was when I wrote this book has also evolved and changed. And so the best
Mm.
thing that we can do is be present to the moment with whatever that conversation is, that project is, that artistic endeavor is, and to put our best version into that, whatever it is that we are doing, because 2, 3, 4, 5 months from then, we're going to evolve, particularly if we're reading
Hmm.
self-help books or working with a coach, or we're just expanding our awareness and consciousness in life. So it's never going to be perfect. It's just going to be
Hmm.
more that you move forward. And when you see it from that linear perspective of what you did maybe 6 months ago or 5 years ago, you might think, oh, what I'm doing now is better, or how I see that now has changed to I see a different way that excites me. And so we want to be able to approach life and relationships and all things that we're interested from that perspective of knowing that I don't know if I'm going to like this 6 months from now. I don't know if this is going to be a great idea a year from now, but fuck around and find out, you know?
Yes. Okay, I love that you said fuck around and find out. I
Yeah.
always say that statement, especially when I can get stuck into these perfectionistic loops. But I love how you really illustrated this point of like, well, listen, I wrote this book and it took me 15 years. The actual writing of the book, it didn't take you long.
Mhm.
But it was a 15-year cycle of you're like, I could have written 3 books in that time. And
Yeah.
it's like, and I think people think of like of 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 like they stop themselves from actually starting the thing, doing the project, writing the book, creating content because they think I need to do more, know more,
Mhm.
whatever, and that just stops them from actually doing the thing when you illustrated a perfect point, a perfect point where it's like in each moment you are a completely different person. Like
Mhm.
you just have to go from where you're at because like you said, it seems like you don't even recognize the person who wrote the book. You even forgot what you wrote because you're literally a different person now, even months later.
Yes, this is just April, and we're like, I don't know, 5 months after the fact, if I count my months right. That's it. So already I've
Mhm.
shifted and I'm already on book two. But I literally wrote 2 books, and one was over 200 pages that I never published. It was sitting there and it was for men. And what's interesting is though I don't regret putting it out there because it came from a different tone. It came from influences from my father's generation to using
Mhm.
communication that has changed a lot. So
Mhm.
I recognize that as well, that, maybe that was something intuitively I picked up on, or I was just to take a different direction. But
Mhm.
most people never, complete things because they go through analysis paralysis. And that saying I just said, fuck around and find out, did not come from me. That came from a gentleman named Mike Koenigs, who is like one of the biggest marketers out there. He's been on a stage with Tony Robbins, and he's also, and my partner who works with me works with him. And he said, Mike says it all the time. And what's funny
Mhm.
about Mike is that he made his millions of dollars by creating a fart app. a app that
Wow.
made fart sounds. And then
Wow.
now that way he runs his business is that like he makes a lot of money, but
Hmm.
it's like almost experienced one of those when they were gonna say do the audio recordings of my book, like do a basically do an audible version. His company
Hmm.
was just still figuring things out. They sent me a quote, and I decided to go a different direction. But they were going to use AI to communicate as my voice. And what happened was I went, you know what? It has to either be my own voice or another human's voice. I am not going to use AI. I just can't go down that path. Okay. So, but when they sent me the email, some things I didn't receive it. So there was some problems with the back end. And this
Hmm.
is a person who charges a lot of money for consultations, Mike, and his team, they generate money from other projects they're working on. However, this startup project they pitched me, I was one of the first people, and it actually didn't work well. Like they actually said, thank you for the feedback, and they fixed it. So here I'm a new potential client or customer, and here is a person who runs a multi-million dollar business, and he's saying, fuck around and find out. He's basically saying that you don't know uh, what you need to know until you need to know it.
Hmm.
And so it's like I didn't look at the company as if they were unprofessional. I just thought that, okay, they're still working through the kinks. And I think many of us will be forgiven if there's transparency in the communication. But there's an example of someone who's been successful in many things, and there's some things that just didn't work out because it didn't work out. But at least he tried. At least he tried. And that's what we need to do. And remember that it's when the focus is more on the creation, when the focus is more on the excitement of what it is that you think you're going to do, when the focus is more in experience and a relationship and the development, including working around like something that maybe fails or doesn't work out, there's supposed to be excitement in that. Because once you
Mm.
arrive to where you see money coming into the bank or the system is maybe it seems to be streamlined and smooth, there's going to be some party still that's going to go, there's something else to do. You're going to start feeling complacent. You're going to want to start a new project. And it's why we often see an entrepreneur do multiple things. You
Mhm.
see them, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, I'm bringing up Ryan Reynolds. Like, I think
Mm, mm.
he invested in Mint Mobile or something, and he just sold it for like
Okay.
$1 billion. But he's an actor. He doesn't like need to make more money. But I noticed that
Mm,
he has his hands in different things because he's a creative person.
mhm,
So we're
mhm.
here to create and express ourselves.
I think that's a great example because you're really showcasing that, hey, even one of the biggest companies, they're super well known. He works with Tony Robbins. He fucked up, but the difference is why people are more forgiving is you're transparent with the communication.
Mhm,
And I just think that that's fuck around and find out is
mhm,
just fabulous. And another point that you made that I think is really important to showcase is you're focusing more on the experience. And I'll just give like a personal example. So I started working with a business coach a few months ago,
mhm,
and he had me really fixing my sales process and my discovery calls with people, really shifting a lot of the language that I was using. And I was just really struggling with implementing these new changes. I felt so much resistance to it, but I tried to force my way into his way. I was really trying to mold myself into this. And then I was working with my somatic coach, and she was like, Valerie, it sounds like you're trying to put on almost like a performance. You're trying to be someone who you're not. You're not actually in the experience. And
mhm,
that's truly what was the case. I was focused more on the goal, on what I can get versus what can I bring to them? How can I
mhm,
serve them better? When we're actually in our body and present in the moment, that's when you can actually focus more on the experience, what you can do for them,
mhm,
versus the opposite, being stuck in analysis paralysis and just stuck on making everything perfect, because that really dehumanizes that makes someone dehumanize you when you're showcasing yourself as this quote unquote perfect person. And so if someone's stuck in that cycle of analysis paralysis, they're really stuck in this perfectionistic cycle, what would you recommend to someone who's going through that?
It's asking these questions. which these are questions, and I'm not trying to plug my book, but it's like there's a lot of sentence stems in there that actually helps people kind of elicit those hidden fears. It would be this: what am I really afraid of, such as if I were to be successful? Um,
Mm.
if people were not to like this, how would I feel about myself? Um, if I were to put this out there, is there some level of personal responsibility that I don't want to take? Um,
Oh,
if I were to earn more money or things were to expand for me, do I truly feel I have the capacity to live this lifestyle? If my business were to grow, would I be uncomfortable hiring and firing people? Am I clear with my boundaries and who I am? And therefore, if not, if I put this out there, how would this possibly trigger that or make me have to grow more when I feel like I'm not ready to do right now? I mean, I'm just making these up on the spot, but if someone were to go back and listen to that, take notes of those questions, that alone will elicit that true maybe conversation, such as, I'm not going to get money from my parents anymore. It could be
mm,
that I no longer can blame my past. It could be that um, then I have to really kind of take personal responsibility and stay consistent, which has been difficult in my life. So
mm,
there's that. And then sometimes what's really cool is that a person recognizes that they're just doing it for some like attention or validation. So that is why they've been procrastinating because it's not really who they are. And if you come across that, that's a great gem, as far as understanding yourself, because a lot of times people will move in a direction towards it's not necessarily their purpose. They're just trying to get away from pain. They're trying to escape something,
mm,
or they're trying to get finally
mm,
dad or mom to say, "I'm so proud of you." And
mm.
that's negative leverage. And when I work with, say, clients like that, that is the reason why they don't feel motivated. That is why, like, it starts getting boring because they're there at a job or they have a product or service, and they're thinking to themselves like, "Why am I bored? This is not who I am." But I'm supposed to be liking this or something.
Mm, right. That story that they're adding. I'm supposed to be here. I'm
Mm.
supposed to like this. And I loved those questions. If you are at this point, really listen back to what Dr. Ray mentioned and really like journal on some of those questions and really think about it. And I want to add a point to the personal responsibility piece because I feel when we expand, right, whether that's going back to school, expanding your business, changing careers, moving cities or countries. It's like we have before this capacity that our nervous system is used to,
Mhm.
and then we step into this expanded version of ourselves, and
Yes.
I like to call it new levels, new devils. And then with this personal responsibility, can you hold that new level of responsibility? And usually if
Yes.
your instinct answer is no, really trace back to, well, what's the reason I'm saying no? Usually it's because it's triggering our inner child, right? Because when we have any big response to something, it's not coming from our true adult self who feels capable. It's coming from that 4-year-old self, because a 4-year-old can't sell a product or service or write a book. It's out of their scope, and that could be triggering something
Mm.
within them. Like if they were parentified, if they were given too much responsibility at that younger age, that's what your business or your job or moving can be triggering within you. It's not even now about the perfectionism, it's about healing this younger version of you.
Yes, I want to add to that. Thank you. By the way, you're so well spoken.
Oh, thank you.
I enjoy communicating with you because I can be really long-winded and you will actually break it apart like 3 points. And not
Thank
many
you.
people who share like I have conversations with have the
Mm,
capacity to follow me.
thank you. I
So
appreciate that.
thank you for that. So you mentioned
Mhm.
about the emotions and as far as like when a person doesn't feel like they have the capacity. So a great way to look at perfectionism, it is a byproduct of those emotions. In other words, it's
Mhm.
not really, so it's the result is perfectionism. That's what
Mhm.
happens because you don't feel emotionally sound or you're not emotionally resilient, and so forth. And I'm going to share an example, and I'm and it's about my son's mother, and it's not negative.
Mhm.
However, like she has refused to say see a therapist or a coach, and so
Mhm.
and she's pretty open with me. She shares a lot of stuff with me, and she does look up to me. And she asked me the other day, and it was like 2 weeks ago. It was a conversation, and where she's kind of somewhat, whether it was communication via text or something, but she kind of was splitting hairs with me when I actually have our son 98% of the time. I pay for everything. It's been this way forever. And not only do I take care of our family, I help her out. I mean, we were never married, none of that. I help her boyfriend out. I mean, like I really support their family in ways that, people don't do. And so I don't typically get that support here at all. Nothing. I mean, I'm talking about where I pick our son up from school. I take him to all the appointments and everything. And she said to me, because what happened was I said, I mentioned, I didn't throw in her face of what I'm doing for her, but I think I missed something. And I started giving like the list. I said, are you aware that I'm taking care of this container. I'm taking care of this container. I have 16 people who work for me. And, and she, like, I do a lot in one day, and I have people working to help me. And she says, I don't know how you do this. I just don't know how you could do it. Because I helped get her a babysitter while I had my projects going on here. I still help her get information because I'll hire my VA to do research. He gives it to me, I give it to her because she doesn't have the capacity to create that container for that to happen. And you might ask why. And this is for everyone listening to this. She's a people pleaser. She's afraid to express herself. She's afraid of change. And at the core of that, it's that she maybe lacks trust in herself. So, as for her, she wants to keep life as simple as she can. So she's the only one to deal with. I mean, she can only answer to herself. Whereas when you open yourself up to managing people, their emotions, you
Mhm.
open yourself up to more conversations. Yes, you could be made out to be wrong. You can be blamed for hurting someone's feelings. You might hear a lot more criticism. So a lot of times people say, I want to do this business. It might even be where, I want to let go of cleaning the house and hire someone for just 2 days a month. But there's fear around, what if it doesn't work out? Well, you're just going to have to let them go. What if they don't do things right? Well, you have to give them feedback. Well, I'm afraid of giving feedback. And so little things like that, the simplest things become really difficult. And you might ask yourself, why do I have this post-it for so long? I haven't got to this. There might be some like fear there because of, like we brought up here, like those hidden emotions. I don't know if I can handle this. I don't know if I trust myself. I'm afraid to lean into conflict.
Mm. Absolutely. It's like you notice, okay, she's in this cycle, and this is other people too, right? If you're
Mhm.
stuck in
Yes.
perfectionism, it's like starting with, okay, something has breached my emotions, meaning something has caused me to not have a healthy relationship with my emotions. So then it gets stuck, and then I lack trust, I people please, I now am keeping my life small. It feels too big to
Hmm.
expand my life because I have limited capacity. And when, like you mentioned, it seems like she's not open to, you
Hmm.
know, working with someone, and that's understandable. Not everyone is, but it's like your brain hates change. It hates the familiar. So it's keeping her small. And exactly right. Like when we aren't building our capacity, right? We might say, oh, I want this business, or I want to write this book, or I want to do this big thing. But if we haven't worked through those limiting beliefs and those patterns where maybe what if I don't trust myself? That's
Hmm.
really where these what ifs come from. And
Yeah.
that's where this anxious attachment comes from. It's
Hmm.
the anxious attachment isn't about the what ifs and the worries. It's the lack of self-trust. It's the
Hmm.
feeling that if my partner leaves me, I won't be okay. And
Mhm.
that's what keeps us stuck in these perfectionistic patterns, in these people-pleasing patterns. And that's what stops us truly from living our life. Because at each new level, aka we're going to have a new devil, we're going to have something we're trying to work through because our brain is wired for the familiar. It hates that. And so I'd love to also talk about, because you mentioned earlier about procrastination, how that can really go hand in hand with perfectionism and how to really transcend that procrastination. Because usually you'll get that procrastination right before you're about to jump into a new level.
You just shared a bunch of golden nuggets. So everyone go back and listen to that. Like you have a, by the way, you have a bunch of beautiful clips you can share from just what you just said. Like it
Thank
was
you.
really good. It was really fucking good. So
Thank you.
like it's like if you were to ask me, do I have more to say to that? I'd say nope. That was so as far as the procrastination, it goes hand in hand, like you said, because there's some there's that fear if I put it out there, then I'm going to be vulnerable. So I'll just leave that idea over here to if I put it out there, then I am going to have to stay committed and keep walking on that path. And I'm really not sure I'm going to put this project back over here. It's the same thing. It's like there's this fear. However, just one thing, or maybe it's a couple things, but sometimes what comes with procrastination is what I mentioned earlier, and it's that it's not whatever that thing is, it's coming from fear. It's not your authentic self. Therefore, maybe your soul's saying, "Hey, don't do that," or wait, take pause and integrate before you move forward, and that's okay. Like I'll give you an example. I've been living here in Ashland, Oregon for almost like 2 years, 9 months, and I'm moving pretty soon here again. And my girlfriend asked me, like, why is it that I haven't started a band here? To why is it that there's certain things I haven't done? And part of that is that the culture here is a lot different than what I expected, to where what the things I would do might not be well received. And where I can validate this is I've done some workshops here and speaking engagements, and it definitely is a different culture. And meaning that I would say this as an example, they're just kind of the music they're into, the nightlife they're maybe into is not like what I'm used to. So that some part of me knows this, and I will admit this, being a Leo also, whether I'm doing a talk or playing in my band, that what really excites me is the engagement. What really excites me is that crowd interaction. And so if I don't have that, and if I'm pulling teeth for people, and I'm at an age, and I've had a lot of great life experiences where I don't really have to work that fucking hard. Like I just know that it shouldn't be that hard. Uh, so that was my intuition, my heart arrived to that, but I wasn't procrastinating. And I bring this up, Valerie, because sometimes there's truth in that. Then some people might say, well, what would happen if you performed or you did a workshop and you were not well received? It happened already. It happened already, and that gave me the feedback. So in the beginning, I first thought, I thought I wasn't sure because I just moved. I didn't know the culture. But when I did a couple men's workshops, the guys were not aligned, and I was right. But I tried it anyway. When I did this talk, and it was to share my book, I had 16 people show up to this library. 5 people booked a discovery call, meaning to maybe work with me. All 5 people flaked. Something happened. 2 people didn't let me know they're going to be on a call. Like it's a very flaky culture. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not, I'm okay with it, but that's an example but I tried. And so don't look at these things that don't work out as failure. Look at them as feedback. Feedback to create something new and then create that new idea. Start that. And that's something I wanted to bring to this conversation too, because the most successful people I've worked with, you have no idea how many things they did that maybe we've considered failed.
Hmm. Hmm.
So this is another example of fuck around and find out.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's such a great example of like, okay, where am I? So even just the procrastination, it's like tuning into what is my authentic self? What is my soul saying?
Hmm.
Versus, oh, maybe this is procrastination or something isn't working out because this is not in my highest good. And I
Hmm.
think using your example, like I deeply resonate that, like you're in Oregon,
Hmm.
you've done the workshops, you've done these things, and you can feel, okay, even the people coming into my space aren't aligned. These results aren't flowing so naturally. And even in my own life, well, okay, just going back to the not procrastinating and then the soul part, I feel I can tell the difference. I myself am about to be co-authoring a book.
Hmm.
It's going to be published in 2025, and I can feel myself procrastinating it. It's literally due at the end of August, and I've done probably a quarter of it, just being honest. But
Hmm.
it's not because I feel that it's not right. It's just, again, that new devil come up, and that's something for me to integrate. But it's like there's also this project that I worked really hard on, like co-collaborated with someone on, and I could feel that this just isn't in alignment. Something kept getting me to procrastinate. I always felt resistant. It didn't feel good to do.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so I think there's a big difference in differentiating that. But before I go on to my next point, yeah, any thoughts on that?
Well, is it just with another person or a bunch of authors?
So it's with a bunch of different peeps. So I'm actually really excited about it.
Well, that could be harder. So I want to validate you a little bit because if you only have one chapter, a small section, oh, that's the most fucking difficult thing to write. Okay, so
Yes.
validate you.
Yeah.
Okay, so if someone were to ask me, what would you share about your work, or what would be the greatest thing that you can say to others? I'd be like, oh my God, the hardest copy is the copy that has to be succinct, and you're like, there's a word count. When I wrote my book, I didn't have a word
Yes.
count, so
Mm.
so there's
Oh,
that.
that
So,
hits.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Are you okay if I'll be a typical dude, I'll fix something that's not broken. Um, so can I give you a little tip on that? Because
Absolutely.
I have many friends who were basically co-authors and did the same thing, including my girlfriend Nicole, and it's this: start first with the end in mind. That would
Mm.
be, what would you want the leavers to be left with and feeling? What would be
Mm.
the change?
Mm.
So you start with that. It'd be, I have a new relationship tip to, I understand trauma at a certain level and how it affects my relationships and what I could do to maybe heal it so I can move forward and, get into a healthier relationship. So really uh, just make sure it's visceral. Do it in a meditation.
Mm.
What would be that one chapter, that person who puts the book down after reading the chapter, what would they be feeling? What would be the outcome? When you start with that, you have that story, then what you do is from that story, take out the adjectives, like
Mm.
like transformation to kicking ass to whatever. It's just some like fiery words to
Mm.
have there also, because those will be like those will have more of an anchor for you to have the emotions to keep that alive,
Mm.
and
Mm.
then go backwards to the journey. If this is going to be like a Joseph Campbell's journey, to where this person, be clear with your chapter, make sure you're solving at least one problem. So imagine this person is now here, they don't know how to get out of the cave, and they start to walk, and they have uncertainty. They have uncertainty about the author, they have uncertainty about their life. They get into a place of fear because they now see what the problem is. And then, just
Mm.
like most of our journeys, this person meets a master, a person who's going to share information. They meet a shaman, they meet a, a nun, they meet, a monk or something on a journey, and that person gives them that information of what they can take and to continue their journey to where they have something to help them. It'd be no different than someone saying, "Hey, you're going to battle. Here's a sword." So you're giving this person knowledge. Now the person has some of your information. What do they do with it? And then how did that lead to the positive outcome? You can put that into one chapter. So see it as a story, see it as a hero's
Mm-hmm.
journey, and start with the end in mind.
Yes.
And you'll write
That's
that really quickly.
Yeah, that's like really effing helpful because so the whole book, I'm not trying to say too many, but we'll get back on track of the perfectionistic pieces and all and procrastination and all that amazingness. But that really hits because the whole book, the whole preface is like it's called Mixtape Memories, the music of your life. So you're supposed to write about the song, how that impacted you, all of that, and then
Mhm.
how that really emulates you. And so for me, my chapter is literally the first one. So I was like, oh, that definitely hits what you mentioned. And then also my song is Demons by Imagine Dragons. And Dan, the lead guitarist, talks about how his therapist changed his life, all of these things, his own struggles with anxiety and depression. And I feel like how you mentioned, talk about the end in mind. And so for me, that one thing that has really transformed my life is somatic therapy. And I can really paint the picture of what my life looked like, the mistakes I made, and how the song helped me to actually move forward and actually get the right help for what I
Mhm.
was going through with my chronic anxiety and all of that stuff. So I feel like that's real helpful. So I really appreciate that tip.
This is really good. So this is where you have an advantage of
Yeah.
being the first author. Most people will read at least 3 chapters.
T. Oh, okay. Hey,
Okay.
that's fabulous. Oh,
Mhm.
cool. I love that.
So they'll read. So there's the advantage. Number two is that you are the host of the
Mhm.
restaurant. You're the
Mm.
host. So how would you lay out the red carpet? And
Mhm.
so you can write in ways where it poetically shares what you're doing, but how maybe the journey will unfold by the upcoming chapters. You might be
Mm.
able to say pay tribute to the authors you don't know and what's going to happen, and maybe have a conversation with the person who's putting this container together to say, hey, as the first person writing a chapter, which is really important, make sure you sell it to her because there is value in it. That it'd be important that they read the rest of the chapters and authors. How would you feel if I get a couple more pages for maybe the intro and the ending because I am the first person writing this? And maybe you'll get a couple more pages, maybe another extra 500 to 800 words. Why not?
Mm.
Because my book
Mm.
is the same way, meaning that, of course, it's I was the author so I had to deal with that, but there's a way to use the work. It goes first into dedication, then an introduction to my journey. I'm pretty quick with what I say, and then the
Mhm.
first chapters, the courage to begin, a step into the unknown. Did you know that's why I wrote that chapter? It just basically goes into the unknown and it goes right into case studies with a person
Mhm.
having a breakthrough. So I
Mm.
immediately show them what's possible. That wasn't just
Mhm.
randomly planned. So my
Right.
book, you'll see if you read the whole thing, is like a story. It goes from the beginning
Mhm.
and the ending of what it will look like living this way, because the very end of the chapter it talks about what would it look like to be a heart-centered warrior. What would that look like
Mhm.
to live that way as a man or woman and with your heart open? And I share a little bit of that, but that's a continuation to book two. No one knows I'm writing. So what I
Mm.
shared with you is actually the formula for my book. You're just going to do it in
Mhm.
one chapter.
Mm.
And by the way, I know
Wow.
this is not the perfect podcast. We're supposed to be talking about perfectionism, but what I find this why I enjoyed this because this is part of it. We just went to our excitement. We just went to
Mhm.
like this is just the way it is, and more people might be interested and engaged with your book than
Mhm.
the rest of the shit we just spoke about.
So that's super fair. Yeah, because and this is just how Dr. Ray and I get off of these perfectionistic tendencies, because if I was really, really stuck in the perfectionism in that moment, I would have stopped him, or I wouldn't have talked about this personal example. But it's just showing how much more you can receive from people and from yourself when you tune into yourself, when you can learn to let go of these perfectionistic tendencies and learn to trust the unknown, kind of like what Dr. Ray literally just talked about. And also, I wanted to piggyback even back further, back to what you
So
mentioned
you tracked
earlier.
something. We're like 30 minutes already in this talk, and you tracked it, but you take notes. Maybe
Thank
that's
you.
your secret weapon.
Yeah, well, a tiny bit, but even still, I made this mental note because you mentioned earlier there's a different place in Asheville that you're thinking of moving to, and all of these workshops didn't work out. And this is getting somewhat off topic, but on topic at the same time. I noticed myself, I was like, oh, that really hits because I live in Ohio. It's not really a place for like coaches per se. Like, we're not really big into like healing and things like that. I have different groups that I'm in here, like local to Ohio, but that just hit. And going back to the anxious attachment a little bit, people become obsessed with people
Mhm.
when they also see something within them. And so, for example, I'm going onto so many different tangents, but this guy that I'm friends with, he decided on a whim to move to a different state. And this state has a lot of coaches, a lot of entrepreneurs, and he doesn't really know anyone. He also works remote. And a part of me, I noticed once I left his party, I noticed a part of me felt fixated on him. It felt fixated on his move that he was making because a part of me secretly really wants that. But a
Mhm.
part of me is resisting that fear of the unknown because a part of me tells me, oh, well, you don't know people in these different states, blah, 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 blah.
By the way,
All
what
these
state is
things.
it? What state did you move to?
Austin, Texas, or
Yeah,
he's in the midst of moving.
Interesting.
But yeah, I noticed a part of me becoming really like fixated on him. I hope he's not listening to this, but whatever. But I noticed a part of me was like fixated. Yeah, it's so funny. But I noticed a
Well,
part of
so
me
Val,
was
hold
really
on, hold on.
fixated on that. Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to give an example of this, Valerie, because there's some there's a gem in this, and it's you, and it's that. So I would say most people, and I know it's a generalization, but I think it's pretty accurate.
Hmm.
They would actually attack that person, like the man who was going to Austin. They would talk, maybe even tell him that's not a good idea, because
Yes.
underneath that, they yearn for that, or they're afraid of that.
Hmm.
And so Valerie's just being completely transparent and saying, this is why this triggers me, because I need to be doing this, or I need some type of change, which is cool. And that's taking personal responsibility. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and thank you for listening. And yeah, it's just like, especially with anxious attachment and perfectionism, we're thinking, oh, if I get a book deal, or if I get this out there, if I get this thing out there, then I'll be happy or whatever. But, and also, we're so quick to attack other people. Oh, my partner didn't text me back. Now I'm freaking out, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, well, what within you is being triggered? What within you is a hidden, where is the hidden fear within yourself that you're refusing to acknowledge? And that goes the same with procrastination, because procrastination, like Dr. Ray talked about, it really is just that hidden fear of, what if I'm not lovable, if this doesn't go wrong, if this
Mhm.
doesn't go right? What if
Yeah.
that's really the case?
Well, I'm moving to a new state where there's uncertain things, but I think I'm pretty accurate with what's going to be created there. Uh, so it's taken me so long to get where I'm at right now. Like, and this book that I wrote was the first project I had done where I was fully present with it. And we're talking about, I teach this stuff for, I've been teaching this stuff for
Hmm.
30 years, but still I had these outdated programs. So I'll give you
Hmm.
an example. of we can call it accomplishments. So first off, I became self-employed at 23 and was, making over six figures already. I was and that maybe for some people was a huge accomplishment. I bought a recording studio, which was successful. That was an accomplishment. So I went back to school I got my doctorate. That was a accomplishment. Oh, when I recorded my album in 2001, 2002, I think, I was on a radio. But during all of that, I was more outcome driven. It was what you just shared. I thought that it would earn me maybe respect, maybe money or something. And so when those things didn't show up or they didn't show up the way I thought they would, I was either disappointed or after I was done with the project, I was exhausted.
Mm.
However, with my book, which was kind of funny about this, was I had someone who was helped me with the promotion, and it was like I think it was the second meeting she had with me. She sent me a message on WhatsApp. She said, "I don't know if it's just me, but you seem to be very nonchalant about this."
Mm.
And to where she was concerned because I wasn't frantic and trying to get all this promotional stuff going on and things like that. And says, thank you. I took it as a compliment. I said, you're right. I said, I will become a bestseller because of some strategies I've put in place, but it's not just that. Whether I sold, five books or 2,000, it doesn't really matter. This time, it's really about the creation and learn about this process for my second and third book as well. So, and sure, it worked out and I sold a lot of copies and it's still selling, but I really enjoyed the process. Um,
Mm.
and here's the thing, because you know this also, because I think, I don't know if I did the conversation with you after. Did you and I have that talk after my book release or was before?
I think it was right after or soon after.
Okay, I this is no bullshit. The book came out April 17th.
Um,
I got sick on April 19th. Usually, like right now, I have a mild cold. It's almost gone. Usually I bang things out in a week. This thing took me almost 3 months to recover from.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, I couldn't stand, like I was getting like these vertigo, experiences, not fully dizzy it was just a really nasty sinus infection. And so I had something planned out. I had it all perfect, and that was the book comes out, I become bestseller. After the book comes out, for 2 weeks, I keep pounding it. You do it this way, you post this way, you do the social media right. And then it was supposed to lead people to this group experience where I'm coaching them so it can support them while they're reading their book. But I'm fucking here all sick on I can't do this. This sucks. And I kept resisting it. I'm like, because we had it planned out. This process that we like guiding people through my book and helping people with their lives, it's not gonna be launched September 9th. It took that long. But the thing was, is like life presented itself. Yes, I got sick, but it's not like that just happened randomly. I never get sick, nor for that long. The universe was saying, you're going to take summer off, you're going to go on vacation, you're going to enjoy your life, you're going to celebrate your accomplishment. And that's what I did. So I'm back to it. We're starting to put together, in fact, after this call, I have a talk with my partner, a conversation with my partner, where we're going to set those plans now. We're not delayed. It just wasn't supposed to happen in April. That's
Mm.
another example where things, trust divine timing.
Mhm.
I didn't have the
Mhm.
capacity physically to work with people and to do this.
Mhm.
And I might have worn myself out, or it was my best summer with my son. It was my best summer. Like,
Oh.
yeah, it was a really, really great summer. Really great summer
Mm.
where I finally felt like I settled in after the pandemic. It was like,
Mm.
and so now I'm
Wow.
enjoying the roses and my flowers and my backyard and all of that. So it's like, was the result to sell 1 million copies, or was the result to feel accomplished and in my heart and be able to enjoy the experience of the creation for not just when it came out, but for the rest of my life?
Absolutely. I can even feel the passion and like authentic connection you have with your book and your creation in your voice. And I in my mind, I almost laugh because people say, oh, you make plans and God laughs or the universe laughs, or it's just whenever you try and control
Mhm.
the outcome, like you talked about, like earlier in your earlier life, you
Mhm.
were successful and you were very outcome driven and maybe a little bit of that control, right? Because we're feeling that that goal is going to make us happy. When in reality, and we're so conditioned for that. We're so conditioned. Society conditions us. Movies condition us. The media conditions us. When we get that relationship, we're finally going to be happy. When we get that 6 or 7 figure business, when we release that book, when we're a bestseller, then we're finally going to be happy. But it's like you said, it's not about the actual accomplishment or the outcome. It's about who you are becoming within that process. And
Yes.
I love that you described it as being redirected because even with this guy that I was describing earlier, it's like I almost laughed because I was like, clearly in this moment in time, he's not meant to be in my life. Literally the universe redirected me. A rejection is just a redirection. And I know that can be the most cliche thing, but if something is truly meant to be in your life, it will be. And this has been like
Yes.
my own experience with like at one point I thought when I started my business, oh, I'm going to work for this company. I was making comfortable enough money, and then I'll do my business on the side. My thing was like, oh, I'll work with them for a few years. LOL at me because I got fired 3 months later. And it's like, yeah, it makes sense why everything turned out the way it did because the universe will force you almost in a way to take a different route than what your ego is telling you is
Yeah.
comfortable and quote unquote safe, which is really just not expanded into your true adult self.
Yeah. One of the things I learned from one of my mentors is that when we try to use our logical mind, more than often we're just repeating history. We're trying to basically put together things that we do know when true creation comes from what we don't know. It's a new thing.
Mm,
So
mm,
you talked about control. Oh my God,
hmm
Valerie. So this will really, maybe I should have led with this in the beginning of this share, but
Hey.
I had IBS because I was so controlling. If
Hmm.
any of you are curious of like like if you have some health issues, I highly recommend the book You Can Heal Your Life because the chapters in the back, Louise Hay, she interviewed over 14,000 people, and I have to tell you that when I use this book for myself and clients, it's about 95% accurate. As an example, when I got divorced, I passed a kidney stone. It was anger.
Hmm.
It was anger.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I was such a perfectionist. I was very controlling, not so much of people, but of things and circumstances. So, but I also want to share that with that came very strong boundaries and a clear mind and a clear map. And I don't know how some people can hear this as great. I see the perceived value and I got value from what you just shared to some person might say, look, good for you that you've been that successful and have the poor me story. But I'm sharing this to really bring this home because I know most people haven't accomplished the things that they think they're supposed to do or what they think is success. An example would be that they actually got married or they're with a really good soulful partner. Okay. I have a really great partner. Two, they never bought a home. I own three. Okay. Uh, I don't work a lot of hours. I maybe work 20 hours a week. That's it. And I'm with my son full time. I see my son more than two parents put together. And so I could keep going on that I created this. So most of my life is streamlined. I have people who clean my house twice a month. I have that service. I have a meal prep service. I mean, I have a private chef who serves my family. Like I really live a very opulent lifestyle. But I have to tell you this, it came through hard work. It came from being clear and committed to it. It came from really working on myself. It came from fucking around and finding out. It
Mhm.
supports my life, but this is the big thing. To people hearing this, they'll think, oh, you're fortunate or you're privileged
Mm.
or lucky
Mm.
you. But I want to share this with you. Even
Mhm.
with all of this and these systems in place, I'm still unsatisfied. With
Mm.
all these things working, I still want to make more money. With these things working out well, I still want to find new plants to plant literally in my garden, even though my fucking garden looks like a botanical garden. That's just me. I'm thinking about painting the house a different color. Do you see? So when that outcome arrives, you're never going to be satisfied. And when that outcome shows up, you're still going to be a little bit restless because that's the human spirit. You're not
Mhm.
here to become complacent. You're here to challenge your consciousness, to expand your awareness, and to uplevel your consciousness.
Mm. Absolutely. And I love how you kind of explain that because it's of like the outcome driven. It's like even with well, it sounds like to me, everything you could want, you have, but a part of you still wants more. And it's not
Mhm.
because there's anything wrong with you. It's because, yeah, just like I like to say, emotions are energy in motion. Same with human beings. When we're not moving emotionally or physically, we
Mhm.
literally get stuck. And like you said, we get complacent. And I loved your statement about like being privileged because so many people think that they're like, oh, you're so lucky you have a business. You're so lucky you have this and that. But it's like, do you understand the amount of work that went into this? Do you understand the amount of shit I had to go through?
Mhm.
Like, literally, do you understand the blood, sweat, and tears sacrifices that you have put in? Like, and like you said earlier, of like mentors that you've worked with, they fuck around and find out. Like even like no one's posting about their failures. They're usually just posting about their wins. And like my first business coach, he had, he's had multiple seven figures, whatever, whatever. But he said the first 3 years of his business, he failed and made no money his
Mhm.
entire first 3 years of business. And so it's like people could say now, oh, you're so privileged, but it's like you're not actually seeing how many times someone has wanted to quit, someone has wanted to give up, how many times people themselves are they're coming up against themselves over and over again. And this is for me. I constantly am coming up against my devils, against my conditioned self, against my unconscious that wants to sabotage me over and over and over again. But I'm like, I refuse to let that stop me because I have this mission that is so much bigger than myself that even like a breathwork coach of mine in the past, he said, even your fear can't stop you. And that is so true for every
Mhm.
area of your life. Something that is truly meant for you will not be taken away. I promise.
Or just if it's an idea that's part of the collective, someone else is going to do it before you do.
Right, right. Absolutely.
Yeah, 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 really good
Hmm.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
to throw in there, and I'm pretty transparent about every corner of my life because I don't fear backlash because I have that with all my relationships, including my son's mother. And
Hmm.
so for those who hear this, don't know the backstory, I'll just share one part of it. So my son showed up when he's 5.5 months old. So I
Hmm.
wasn't there part of the pregnancy. I didn't know a woman was pregnant with my
Mm.
child. So
Hmm.
that's the backstory. And she happened to be with, say, she left an ex, and that guy was crazy. Like she got a three. I helped her get the restraining order for her so she can get her life together. But she showed up pretty much in shambles, and I helped her out. And it got so bad at some point where when she came into my life, that her ex called the board of psychology and made a fraudulent claim. And the board of psychology reached out to me, and my website was taken down for a month and a half because I had to change some words and things like that. Like I really, they discovered it was a fraudulent call, but still, it brought their eyeballs to my website to where they wanted me to just change some words or something like that because I don't work as a psychologist. I work as a coach. They said some words
Hmm.
can be feel more therapeutic, just remove that. But I was scared shitless. My business was shut down. I found out I just had, a son, and I wanted to make sure that he's provided for, and I needed to make money. And all of a sudden, my business wasn't working out for almost 2 to 3 months. Okay, so why I'm bringing this up is that when I tell people that the mother of my child allowed me to move to another state without her first, she lives near me now, to how we have this collaborative relationship. More than often, they'll say, "You're lucky, you're fortunate." Like I don't know how you did that. Well, you also don't know the backstory. And the
Mhm.
backstory is that no matter what came at me, from
Mhm.
her ex to her suffering with her own PTSD, then later discover that I'm a trusting man, because she has apologized for some of the things that she said to me and has done. So I endured a lot of fucking punches.
Mhm.
So when people say, you're fortunate, I'm like, oh, you have no idea. You have no
Mhm.
idea what
Mhm.
I went through to get the relationship to where it's at. And so
Mhm.
people who think like other people are fortunate or they're privileged or they're lucky, I will tell you this, particularly with at least the coach of the clients I work with, almost all of them had to lean into conflict. Almost all of them had to make some dramatic changes, including stuff emotions down to make it about the kids. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So
Mhm.
it's just that they didn't give up. They kept getting back up to, to move in that direction, whatever that creative endeavor was.
Mhm.
Even
Mhm.
a co-parenting relationship. I
Mhm.
created a really good one. I might have one of the best.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, and you have one of the best, not because you're lucky or fortunate, but because you both put in the fucking work.
Mhm.
And that is just shitty fucking timing.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about self-trust earlier, like
Yeah.
that's how you fucking build self-trust. It's not when everything's going well and life is
Mhm.
perfect. Like, can you step up to the plate? Can you trust yourself even when that shit is happening? And I give you so much fucking credit because I can't imagine how terrifying that must have felt when you don't even know you have a child and this 5.5 month old child comes to you that you didn't know you had and your business is shut down for months. Like, how terrifying that must have felt and been.
Oh yeah. At the time, also, I was playing in a band called the Pac-Men. We were an '80s parody band. People can YouTube it and probably see some of those performances, but that was also gig that was paying my bills. And the mother wanted me to watch Max on a weekend when I was performing my band. And she was like, while you're out playing with your friends and while you're goofing off or whatever, she had this perception that I'm fucking around and drinking and performing this band. She was clueless that this was actually a professional band where I 1099 my players. It was
Hmm.
like where how it was a part of my income was from the band. But she later
Hmm.
discovered that, she also benefited from the money I was making. But
Hmm.
all kinds of things that she didn't know. And,
Hmm.
she didn't know who the hell I was really.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
that's a book in and of itself.
Yeah, that's just amazing to see where you both have really started your relationship and
Mhm.
been how it's been catapulted in a positive way. And that shows the strength that
Mhm.
you have to pull yourself out of that. That's so funny. You're like, she didn't even realize what this was doing. And that I wasn't just fucking around. I was literally making an income for our child.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, that's just wild. And is there anything else that you feel, any last advice if someone's listening and they're stuck in analysis paralysis, they're stuck on that creative project, they're stuck in this perfectionistic cycle, what would you tell them?
Um, I would do exactly what I did with you in regards to how to write that chapter. And that would be, sure, you're trying to get to point B. Well, if I were to wave a wand and you were in the experience of point B, what would you be doing? What would that look like? What maybe new responsibilities would you have? Is there anything that you can foresee you don't want to do? And just with that uh, experience, if they really do that, they'll recognize that they got this and that they can start taking the steps moving forward. Or if they recognize that they're not ready, at least they can stop projecting their energy onto what it is they're not doing, and they can maybe start seeing a therapist. They can
Mm-hmm.
stop like just telling everyone I'm a procrastinator, but maybe the next story out of their mouth is I'm starting to read this book and I'm experiencing
Mm-hmm.
self-love. It's just
Mm-hmm.
because if you're, again, like you said, kind of in the share, if it's meant to happen, you would be doing it already. It would be a lot easier. So
Mm-hmm.
stagnation is when the teacher's there already and you're not utilizing it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It really, that really is the key. Noticing, okay, do I just need support from a therapist or coach? Or is it not meant for me? Really tuning in with yourself and not identifying with the labels of, oh, I'm a perfectionist, I'm a procrastinator, I'm a people pleaser, just identifying from them and seeking help when necessary. Because I love the point you made. It's like stagnancy is really you have the help, but you're not utilizing that resource or you're not taking that advice. So I think that is so fabulous. It was such a pleasure to have you on for round two. How can people connect with you, Dr. Ray?
My website is the best way to find me, which is Raydoktor.com, raydoktor.com. And I have free stuff that I give away there. And also, if you can plug my book, the link to it,
Mm-hmm.
because this book does break down consciousness and kind of why you might be doing what you're doing. A lot of what I shared here in this conversation um, are are there are stories and sentence stems throughout my book that can help listeners have that experience as well, So that's all I have to say.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, all the information is going to be in the show notes here. Yeah, thank you so much for being on, Dr. Ray. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you very much.